Today was the beginning of the 116th Congress, and it was very eventful. Pelosi became Speaker again, much to the dismay of me and other progressives. A couple of the Justice Democrats were sworn in. A new scandal emerged in relation to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. New senators were sworn in, so no more Flake, no more Corker, no more Kyle, whatever his name was, who was senator before. He came back after McCain died, but there was a lot of changes that have come into place. I got, by the way, wait, I gotta be with, BW. Wait, I think, you probably meant to say B, but then hit the W by accident. Let me say hello to Dirk. Oh yeah, I know you were over there on Capitol Hill. I put her picture there because when I was sitting here and I was kind of feeling through the different news that was coming in because all these people were losing their minds on social media. They always do this every time there's an election or an inauguration. There was a person who had shared a video of her from of Ocasio-Cortez when she was in high school, or maybe in her first couple of years of college, and it was her dancing, and they had tried to say that this was proof of her lack of intelligence. And I just remember going in the comment section and reading actual people. Most of them were like, "What the hell does this have to do with anything?" Oh my god, I felt like I was watching Fox News online, like Netflix Fox News. Like, just the idea that out of all the stuff you can criticize these politicians for, and there's loads of things for pretty much everybody at this point, you're gonna pull up a video of her from when she was in school. And it's not like she's twerking or doing anything else that could be considered, I guess, crude, but just her jucking and jiving was what caused them to like lose their mind. And oh my god, yeah, you said it correctly. Craziness against her. I have never seen the obsession with someone that to this, just now is getting in Congress. All these stories that came out between when she won the primary against Crowley and today and for the years to come have just been insane. But over the last couple of months, they've been losing their minds over that woman. Um, but there's actually a scandal that I didn't know much about until the last couple of days, and I wanted to make sure I knew the details of it. So I don't know if you're familiar with PAYGO, Dirk, but it's this thing where it's like a pledge that they won't pass any bills that make it to where there's a tax increase. And one of the problems with that, as relates to progressive ideas, is like take Medicare for all, for example. The whole point of that is you raise taxes, but then people save money because now their health care is free. So they save money in the long run because eventually they'll get sick and they won't have to worry about paying the cost for their medicine as they're paying higher taxes. So it screws that up. And you had Jim McGovern come out and go, "Oh no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to mess it up." And we've only had, I believe it's Ro Khanna and Ocasio-Cortez speak out against it. Oh yeah, here you go, Dirk. But what ended up happening was that we have all these other, Justice Democrats, and they're completely remaining silent. And I actually had a person who I follow on Twitter, and they had said that there was apparently something in the package that was, yeah. Oh, yeah, I love Ro Khanna. He's wonderful. But there was someone who said in the package they had slipped a provision that in relation to what's her name, Ilhan Omar, the Muslim one. I'm not trying to be discriminatory, but that's what I know her for, just being the one that always has something on her head. They put a provision in there reportedly that allowed her to wear her head garb as a member of Congress, because in Congress you're not allowed to wear hats, or they have something against wearing hats, and supposedly that was her reason for voting for it, which is still unredeemable to me because only to stay to their base. Yeah, only. Dirk, let me ask you: did you see the video? It was a video done a couple of months ago by Jimmy Dore, and its title is something to the extent of, "Remember when Ayanna Pressley, one of the Justice Democrats, loved Hillary?" And it was, I just, oh my god, he pulled that up out of nowhere. That I had no idea that she even was like that, and it's part of this, that's the kind of stuff that makes me like Ro Khanna and Alexandria more, because you can't pull up a clip of them from 2 years ago saying something completely different. And it just, I was shocked. It was when she supported during the presidential election, or rather the primary, when she supported Hillary, and now she's a progressive. She's actually probably the Justice Democrat I like the least because of that, and then also, um, just sort of a thing of not really like that. To me, sounds like someone who can't take a stand. It's like when now we have Hillary supporters on social media trying to, assassinate Bernie's character. And one of the things they'll say is, oh, I like Harris or Booker or any of these other people that in years after the election have adopted his positions on, single payer health care and the like, to where now you think, wait a second, if these people are so upset with this one guy for, his views or his policies, whatever, but then they support all these other people who have, hijacked his position so they can gear up for a presidential campaign themselves. Doesn't that show you how much of an empty suit they themselves are? I've been on Twitter, more in the last 5 months than maybe in the last 2 or 3 years since that presidential election, the primary in particular. And I have only seen one, self-described Democratic leaning person outright just dismiss multiple policies that Sanders had. So they went, oh, instead of free college, we need to reduce the price. And instead of, there was some other thing, they just had a list of them where they were advocating for something else. But it was just that one person who, on the substance of the policy, as stupid as I thought that they were for what they said, actually disagreed with them. So in a sense, that gives me a little bit of hope, because it goes back to the idea that his ideas might be more popular than he is with them, but it's still stupid. So, Dirk, did you see that video or what? If you don't respond, I'll just keep on going with what I was going to talk about. Yesterday, we had the Romney op-ed where, the incoming Utah senator, the presidential candidate that everyone remembers, said, oh, I am so disgusted with Trump's candor and blah, 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 blah. He's elicited comparisons to Jeff Flake, the former Arizona senator. And it was really funny because every time I read that article, I read it about maybe 2 or 3 times. And when I go and watch interviews with either Flake or with Romney, all I can think of is just, these are people who want me to believe they're so principled and they're so disgusted with Trump's behavior, but then they vote with him, or rather, at least Flake did, over 80% of the time. And that's someone who's disgusted with you. It's almost like me saying, you know what? I really don't like Dirk because of the person that he is. And then you give me and Dirk a test of 100 questions of our, things we like. So, macaroni or just all kind of random stuff. And then we both answer the same exact thing 80% of the time. So you must like him if you and him agree on so much stuff. I say one thing and then I do the other. Well, but even in that example I gave, I would unknowingly have all this stuff in common with him. Flake knowingly says Trump is bad, because of his rhetoric, but then votes with him on all of his stuff. So how can you, be so opposite of him and then be so, alike him in how you vote? It just doesn't make any sense. But, this is the kind of stuff that's not internalized by members of Trump's base. He's had a bunch of them call Romney a rhino, Flake a rhino, Corker a rhino. And these are people that vote with Trump a majority of times. So that goes back to what I was telling you about how they're empty suits. They don't have an actual ideology, because if I was president and I had a senator who said, I'm so sick of, Justin's demeanor, and I can't stand the way he talks to people, and then they go and they vote with me over 80% of the time, I'm not going to care if, you don't like the way I speak, if you're doing all the things I want you to do still, or a majority of the time. Dirk says Mitt is so disgusted that he will vote for all what Romney does, and Trump shouldn't have pulled from Syria and lessened troops of Afghanistan. He should have done more. Yeah, that literally only thing I've seen them, the majority of these Republicans take what could be considered a principal stand, and even then it's just because they're defense contractor flunkies, on when it comes to opposing Trump policy-wise. was pulling out of Syria. And I told you that was one of two things he's done in office that I really liked. So when, one of the few things he does that I really like gets criticized by members of either party, I'm going to defend him. I've lost so many followers on Twitter just like with the never Trump people because they have the derangement syndrome and they want you to be upset no matter what he does. Like, no, go away, please. Don't follow me for that. I'm not interested. Going over to the senators, though, there was a person who made the argument that supposedly by having what's her name in Tennessee, Blackburn instead of Corker, there's a higher chance of Trump having a yes man or a person that always agrees with him. I thought to myself, when did Corker ever vote against Trump? He voted for both of his Supreme Court nominees. He voted against the tax cuts and then came back and voted for it after they slipped a provision in there to save him $1 million a year. So I'm not really sure what the difference is going, other than rhetoric, of course, which seems to be all people are concerned about nowadays. Let me go over to right here. Say something else, Dirk. You 7 people here. You're the only one saying anything. The only character that is contributing to the conversation. I just think progressives are going to get screwed again because, one of the biggest reasons for all of us canvassing around Barbara Lee was the idea that she was someone who had, because they like to prop up experience, over a decade of experience in Congress and had a record that we liked. So, nice to see you're still on. Well, thank you. But yeah, going back to what I was saying, she was someone that seemed to be the best possible solution to this neoliberal problem. And people don't seem to really understand what happens when someone's speaker, what happens when someone has a position of power. They use their power oftentimes to suppress votes on things that they do not care about or they are not concerned with. Look at McConnell on the criminal justice reform bill, the First Step Act or whatever it was called, this really mealy-mouthed half measure that both parties, at the very least were able to get behind. He goes and spends weeks saying, well, I don't think that we can get enough votes on, we can vote on this quickly enough because the session of Congress is almost over. It took Trump coming out and saying, hey, do a vote on this for him to flip, switch his mind. So those are the kind of things that are going to be pitfalls for any progressive that tries to introduce something in the House. I wouldn't be surprised. The Republicans are going to vote against it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Pelosi tries to put in PAYGO or anything else that directly stifles what they're trying to do. And I really wish we could get the list of the various members of the House Democratic Caucus who voted for Jeffries instead of Lee, because they should be primaried. All this bark from useless senators and established Democrats against Trump, but they love the status quo. Well, that's the whole reason I even still share the military budget video, because you have these people who go, oh my God, Trump is so dangerous, so catastrophic, and so evil, and bleh. And then what do you see? Oh, we're going to give him $717 billion to keep bombing 7 countries. And, when you sit there and you ask them, if, you guys speak to Democrats, if Trump is so evil and so different from anything we've ever seen, why are we still in the same 7 wars? Why are we, still have the surveillance state with the Patriot Act? Why do we still have the banks being able to, do whatever they want without any regulations? Why is all of this stuff that was either implemented or continued under Obama still going on under the guy that supposedly is the bringer of chaos and destruction and evil? And that's kind of my thing. They don't think critically about this stuff, which is why they get upset with people who, I said it before. I think this presidential election is going to be a circus, just like the last one, because of the Never Bernie crowd. But then the people they coalesce around adopt his positions. But when I watch them online and the way they speak and they argue, it's just Trump derangement syndrome. Like there's a couple of policy oriented people on both sides, And then it's, people who hate the Democrat or love Trump just because he's Trump, and then people who hate Trump because he's Trump. These are the kind of people that if Trump got impeached or removed from office and Pence was sworn in the next day, would completely withdraw from talking about any of this stuff. All the problems that are going on, get completely ignored. And that's kind of what Pelosi's tenure as speaker is going to be. Because if you look at the last time where all they can do is say, oh, she's strong and all these other empty, worthless platitudes, or bring up Obamacare, which passing one bill as the most powerful member of the House in half a decade is not an accomplishment. But they would sit here and they'll tell you that, and I guarantee you, in the next 2 years, however long the Democrats have the House, however long she stays on as speaker, nothing is going to get done. Did you see the Wall Street stuff? Yeah, yeah. I'd actually seen it before. I will say I misinterpreted your comment because I thought, oh my God, did they find a video of her sitting there and agreeing to do the bidding of the donors? Like, oh no, that's just them trying to corrupt you during orientation and failing miserably. So yeah, that was the transparency of government is great. Um, she did the streams and they were successful. I think Warren tried to do one of them, and she was. I don't know if you saw the video, Dirk, where she tried to do a stream, and she was trying to drink a beer. She offered her husband a beer, and he said no, thank you. And then David Pakman did like a whole segment about it. It's like of all the things to criticize her over, and again, there's many things with all these people. Well, not as much for her as the other ones, but still, of all the things to criticize her for, you're going to get upset that she tries to do something that you don't think is what she should be doing by virtue of how you perceive her as a public figure. But yeah, I did see that video, Dirk. It had I always watch Secular Talk. He is very ahead of his time, or at least, smart. Warren streamed and now she likes beer. Yeah. But what did we really know about her personal life up until this year or these last couple of days? What do we really know about her and what she does on her downtime to where we wouldn't think that in the past? It is her trying to pander or be likable, but hey, when you're running for the highest office in the land, you do whatever you can. So I'm not. It still is not something that should be focused on to where we're going to launch a whole stream and talk about it. But I'm going to see if I can find anything else that was eventful that happened. It is going to be a very chaotic 2 years, and the Democrats, with their continued lust for licking the boots of corporations, are going to play this game of having all these little stupid investigations on Trump, and let that get in the way of them actually having to do any policies. When Trump sits there and he says that, actually, no, screw that. There was an interview with the House now the minority leader, Kevin McCarthy. He did it with Fox, where he said that the Democrats were running an investigation. And this was, I think, right after he lost, or the Republicans lost the midterms. And he was absolutely correct. Even if they did, bring up Medicare for all a couple of times, I guarantee you the most we will see from those that are immediately, propped up at the top. So people like Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, Clyburn are just a bunch of individuals who, criticize Trump's rhetoric, support whatever investigation, somebody gets indicted. And let's go back to that quote that a conservative commentator made that I told you was one that I thought was so good. I actually wrote it down. His name is Steve Dace, or DC. It's Deace. He's a host of this show. He was on C-SPAN on New Year's. He said, "This is going to be a year of mudslinging and grandstanding. Count on it." I guarantee that's exactly what's going to happen. You already see that with the way Ocasio-Cortez gets treated. God, we did the whole video, the whole series rather, where I would just read comments that people wrote on Fox News videos, and also kind of just look at some of the stuff that people were writing. And it's the same thing. They just sit there and don't talk about anything that has to do with anything. They just go, "Oh, socialism, this person said one thing that isn't true, so they're an idiot, even though they literally support a president that I swear to you, there are articles dedicated to all the stuff Trump has gotten wrong. And look, I don't think that should disqualify necessarily someone as running for office. I think the voters should decide that. But the idea that, like, they're backing people who are accurate on all their words and all their sayings is nonsense. Uh, Product Piece says looks like the DNC are making sure Bernie doesn't run in 2020. Yeah, they don't. They're going to do another rigged primary. And I already told you. I did the stream about it where I said they're going to have people like Booker, Harris, and the rest of the establishment crowd run so they can split the vote even more. And then whoever is able to, because remember, the Democratic primary isn't like the Republican one where it's a winner takes all system. Whoever gets the highest amount of delegates out of those establishment people, even if Bernie, gets the most, is going to have the super delegates all of a sudden pounce on top of them. And then, oh, now they have the nomination. And then all the progressives stay home because they're sick of getting treated like crap by their own party. And then Trump wins re-election. I think I don't know if I think I might have talked about this with Dirk before, but we went over this that if Trump won, it would be the first time in U.S. history that 4 presidents back to back got 2 terms. And when Obama won his second term, it was groundbreaking because that was the first time. Put my fingers up. 3 of them had 2 terms back to back since the trio of Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe. So history is being broken repeatedly. And me using that indicator earlier about people getting tired of one guy after a little bit, I really think Trump could literally just do whatever and he still has a good chance of getting reelected based on the fact that these states are so partisan and you have to like squeeze out places like Florida and Pennsylvania and Iowa. And then also, with the DNC, they to this point still haven't realized a lot of the mistakes they made last time around. It is sad. It's sad that we have a rigged system for the presidential elections and also a screwed up opposition party that is going out of its way to screw up the people who are within its own party. This is sad. Then history breaking wars too. Yeah, bombing 7 countries, and then the president decides to pull out of one of them, and he gets attacked by members of both parties. For being on the right side of history, for being anti-war. At last, it's insane. And people still vote for these individuals back in office. I think there was actually a person who made a good point where they said Congress has sometimes, I think it's like a 10, 11% approval rate and really small, hated by both sides. But then most sitting members tend to get reelected. So it's not actually, there's some kind of disconnect there because if you think Congress is so ineffective, why would you put the exact same people back in office over and over again? We have, that would be an interesting stream to just do the longest serving members. And then, look up if you can find their approval rating or, what people actually thought of them while they were in office. It is, I'm almost out of words. And people just focus on all the wrong stuff too. So I went over, the part of Congress that's stupid, where they're going to sit here and do all these investigations on Trump, as opposed to actually passing something in the House, then letting the Republicans kill it in the Senate, then running against them in Senate races on the promise of, if you put our party in the majority in the Senate, we'll be able to pass the things we tried to get passed, but that the Republicans didn't want to compromise on. They're going to launch all these investigations, and going back to how we focus on things that don't matter. I've mentioned a couple of times my disdain for the Arizona senator, the one that won, Hooray Cinema, because she said that Manchin, who, if people don't remember, is the one Democrat that voted to confirm Kavanaugh, the one Democrat that voted for most of Trump's nominees, basically the most Trump supporting Democrat in the Senate. She said that would be her political role model. So she's bound to, screw up and piss people off. But there was a public stir on places like Twitter, and even got an article in relation to the ensemble that she had on when she was getting sworn in. I thought to myself, here's a person who's been in office for years that narrowly, and I'm not again not as I'm not saying this as a supporter of the other one that was running, McSally, but here's a person who was in office for years, narrowly won this election, and all we can do is talk about what clothes she wore on a particular day. Like that is the principal reason. That's everything that's wrong with politics in a nutshell. It's kind of like when you go around and you look at people on social media, for example, who are saying that um, whatever Democrat you can think of, Warren, Harris, Booker, Gillibrand, Garcetti, whoever, Bloomberg, could not win a presidential election because they're not likable. Oftentimes, this is said by people who wouldn't have voted for you in the first place. I'm not going to sit here and speculate on any of the Republicans' chances of unseating Trump because, for one thing, I don't vote in Republican primaries because I'm not a registered member of the party. But secondly, all the people that they've suggested to run against him if he, was impeached or resigned, or and Pence took over, or if he actually stays in office till that point, I think are kind of terrible options. They would not solicit my support. Um, and one of the theories that was posited was that he is doing things like getting out of Syria, meeting with North Korea, because he realizes how unpopular it is to be in the perpetual state of war. And you actually had, I think his name is Cory Gardner, the senator from Colorado, who said they should reopen the government as it's entering its 13th day of being shut down. And it's those kind of omissions that are pointing to this idea that maybe you can get him to kind of work with the Democrats. But if they choose not to, I don't necessarily feel bad for him, feel bad for, him or any of the stuff that's going on, because as I've said it before, on the domestic realm, they're doing things that are not really that interesting. And when, you had Pelosi running for speaker the second time around before she won, you didn't really hear her state any particular policies. You go watch her midterm speech. She said that we're going to strive for peace and unity and all this other, platitude crap, but nothing about environmental laws, college tuition, regardless of whatever stance she had on it. Nothing is outlined in specific. So they're going to keep making those same mistakes by having people like that stay in leadership. No better for them. Anyone else have anything else to say? If not, we can wrap it up now. I just thought it would be a really interesting stream to discuss a lot of the ways that Congress is altering itself, and in many instances going to repeat the same mistakes of the last 2 years. So, nothing else to say. I do. The other thing that I should mention is, it's a wrap. Congress always shooting itself in the foot. Yeah, and I guess all we can do now is just hope for the best from the few people that are actually, worth a damn, and then try to elect more people who are of that same caliber in the next cycle. I would like, just kind of thinking forwardly, maybe for I think it's ineffective. A majority of illegal immigrants come to the U.S. via visas, and then they overstay them and thereby become illegal. So, it can get put up, but it's not going to stem the issue. And really, I just hate having to talk about this topic, but basically just to kind of, yeah, I agree, Dirk, but to kind of explain to Operation Viking, I know people who like speak about this day after day, about the need for it, which is a position I don't agree with. So I kind of gotten to a point where it's literally like the one issue I just don't feel like discussing at all ever, even on here. But I will say I don't care. I would rather have it put up if it means, letting the DACA recipients stay, which a majority of people support. It's amazing. Like I think it was 80-something% of people wanted the DACA recipients to stay. Oh, thank God! I thought I was gonna have another argument with somebody. Um, well, I just told you why I think it's an effective Viking, and I do think it will not be made now. Let me tell you something. If a president has control of Congress, so that their party has the House, the Senate, and they have the White House, and they still can't get something passed in 2 years, no chance. Especially now with the Democrats, this is the one issue you won't see them compromise on at all. But do you see how, because of the ineptitude of the Republicans, a very key part of Trump's campaign may literally never see fruition, or if it ever does, not while he's in office. I'm not talking about impeachment. I'm talking about maybe there's some Republican that runs in, I don't know, 2028 or 2032, and like, I'm gonna bring back the wall that President Trump decreed during 2016, and then they actually finally get it done all the like a decade later. That's the only way I see it being made. But in this current Congress, with, you know, they pass it in the Senate, or they don't, just barely, because I keep forgetting that even though the Republicans are bragging about their new expanded majority, it's only by 2 seats. It reminds me of when you had, I think it was McConnell, who said, we need to make sure that Obama is a one-term president. And then, again, they spend 4 years obstructing him, and they only were able to flip 2 states that he won the previous time. So they failed miserably in trying to make him only have one term. Just North Carolina and Iowa, or not Iowa, Indiana. The only 2 states that Romney flipped from Obama, and that was supposedly an accomplishment. After all those years of smears, and just the more I think about that stuff, is because I remember the period of 2009 to early 2012, and just hearing over and over, he will not win. Romney is the next president. Ha 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 ha. And just it didn't happen. But also just the fact that it was so, oh my God, it was amusing. Let's see here. What else can I say? I think that's pretty much it. So no wall, no free college, no Green New Deal. These are things that all are going to that all can come if the lineup changes. But I don't see enough members switching their position or swaying over to make any of this stuff, regardless of what your political identity is. And it's kind of disturbing that you see this stuff about the obstructionist Democrats that Trump would call them over the last 2 years, and he was blaming them while Republicans literally controlled everything. So now him being able to say that about them might resonate a little bit more. But again, the people who actually believe that already were never going to vote for the Democrats anyway. So it's another one of those things where, what's the point of even trying to pretend to not be what the person is painting you as, when the people who are believing it already thought negatively of you, no matter what you did? And that's kind of, that really does signify the difference between, I think, my stuff and a lot of other liberal leaning people, is just that I don't really care for either party. I care for certain politicians. I say I like Ro Khanna. I say I like Ocasio-Cortez, Sanders, to an extent Warren, just people that I like the positions of, and I don't really care what party they're from. So if Trump passed Medicare for all, I'd give him credit for it, or the Green New Deal. But these are things that I can, because I know how partisan politics are, see him completely abandoned. And it's really sad if you go and look at his past, because I mentioned this before, in one of his books, talked about the need for single payer. So when he actually, gets in office and can do it, doesn't want to do it, or doesn't want to, collaborate or get a comp or anything. So it's all a bunch of empty suits. It's all a bunch of liars. Yeah, just feeding his base. And I told you, Dirk, it's really disgusting, because Trump's base is there. It's built up of people that don't actually care about policy. Like I told you, I got into an argument with one of them where I was talking about he wouldn't end the wars, and they told me, oh, he's doing everything he can, without offering any actual proof of that. And then after he pulls out of Syria, they're all supporting him. They're all crapping on Graham, the guy who literally 2 months ago they were loving so much for standing up for Kavanaugh. And I guarantee you they would go from saying, we don't need government takeover of healthcare to, if Trump passed it, we need to, make sure our workers can do, they would switch over in an instant. Anything he does, it's not even funny. I genuinely believe he could go and say, maybe we don't need the wall, and they would still support, because that's how empty suited these people are. And sometimes that's not such a bad thing, even though, we talk about the demagogues and all that, but it's not, I don't have that kind of view with any of these politicians. If, for example, Ocasio-Cortez and Ro Khanna voted for Pago, I would abandon them in an instant. Um, there were a lot of people who gave Ro Khanna flack for both endorsing Crowley and Cortez. I didn't, because that didn't matter to me as much as the actual policies that he was advocating for as a member of Congress. But you get the point that when progressives get pissed at a candidate, it shows their lack of just being all constrained to that person, or really, dedicated to that individual, in the sense that they'll stick with them no matter what they do. Empty suits with filled pockets. Yeah, exactly. It's astonishing that we even I swear, I always thought that one of the good things about the internet was that people, if they didn't believe something, could go look it up themselves, and then they would have their minds changed because the evidence was presented to them. So, for example, if I write right now that someone, you know, what's a good example? That Obama bombed 7 countries. Somebody who says, I don't think that's true, but I'm going to fact check it, would go and see it and go, oh my God, this is true. Now, they might still like him after finding it out, but they wouldn't doubt the credibility of the claim that I made. Just like there are people who get pissed at a couple of Sanders's votes from when he was in the House. I can criticize him for one of those or 2 of those or however many of those, but it wouldn't change overall the positive impact I think he makes. And that kind of critical thinking and ability to distance yourself from a party or a can't is missing on both sides now. It's just a bunch of people who respond with emotion to every single thing. That's why, the second Flake goes and criticizes Trump over the way that he speaks, all these Republicans that, voted him in office in the first place, abandon him and start talking about he's all these different terms and names. It's just them hearkening to a candidate or a party, and when you don't do the same thing, they lose their minds. So all of the partisan hackery I could really do without. But I suspect it's going to be the case during this session, which already seems like it's going to be longer than 2 years. I just hate the idea that we have to sit here and put up with a couple of decent people mixed in with a bunch of fools, which is a majority of Congress, and hope that a couple more decent ones will get in there to fight back against the waves of idiots. So, just like the Yemen thing, just barely was able to get defeated. And we're not supposed to want these people voted out. We're not supposed to want to remove them from office because they're a Democrat and they're fighting Trump, while they launch investigations that only solidify his argument that they don't have any actual substance themselves. So they're going to go down their own little rabbit hole, and they'll regret doing the stuff that they're going to do. And it will be very amusing to see them continue to play this game, thinking that people actually care about Trump's tax returns or Russia or Stormy or any other crap. But when you give them this critique to focus on things that actually matter, you're called a pseudo Trump supporter. No matter how much you say you disagree with them, no matter how much you say you would rather somebody else, they don't care. Because thinking critically is lost. And I really hope that people try to think critically again during this session. So thank you for watching, and have a good day.